You're not poor because of your circumstances. You're poor because of your habits. And that's going to make some people angry because it's easier to blame the system, the economy, your upbringing, your luck. It's easier to point at everything outside yourself and say, that's why I can't get ahead. But deep down, if you're honest, you know the truth. You know there are people who started with less than you who built more. You know there are people facing the same obstacles who found a way through. The difference isn't circumstances, it's habits. The Stoics understood wealth differently than most people. They didn't worship it, but they didn't demonize it either. They saw it as a tool, a resource, something that could be built through discipline, destroyed through foolishness, and used for good or ill depending on the character of the person wielding it. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome, but his wealth came from his mind, from his discipline, from habits that most people refuse to practice because they require sacrifice today for benefit tomorrow, and that's the key. Poverty isn't just about how much money you have in the bank. It's a mindset. It's a pattern of thinking and behaving that keeps you trapped in scarcity no matter how much comes in. Because if you have poor habits, even when you get money, you'll lose it. You'll spend it on things that don't build. You'll waste it trying to look rich instead of becoming rich. And you'll end up right back where you started, wondering why nothing ever changes. What you're about to hear are the 5 habits that are keeping you poor, not the obvious ones everyone talks about. The deep ones, the mental patterns, the behaviors you've been practicing so long you think they're just part of who you are, but they're not. They're choices, and choices can be changed. The question is whether you're willing to face them, whether you're willing to admit that the biggest obstacle between you and wealth isn't the world, it's you. This isn't going to be comfortable. Some of this will sting, because I'm going to tell you things other people are too polite to say. But if you're serious about changing your financial reality, if you're tired of being stuck, if you're ready to actually build instead of just survive, then you need to hear this. Not tomorrow, right now. Because every day you practice these habits is another day you stay exactly where you are. Habit 1. You choose comfort over discomfort. Every single time, every morning, you have a choice. Do the hard thing or take the easy path. Work on your side project or watch another episode. Learn a valuable skill or scroll for 2 hours. Make the call that scares you or avoid it another day. And every single time you choose comfort. You choose what feels good now over what would benefit you later. And that choice, repeated daily, is why you're broke. Rich people understand something poor people don't. Comfort is expensive. Every time you choose the easy option, you're paying for it with your future. When you sleep in instead of waking up early to build, you're choosing poverty. When you order takeout instead of cooking because you're tired, you're choosing poverty. When you avoid difficult conversations, challenging work, uncomfortable growth because it's hard, you're choosing poverty. Not just financially, mentally, spiritually, in every way that matters. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort specifically to build this muscle. They would fast when they had food, sleep on hard floors when they had beds, wear simple clothes when they could afford luxury, not because they hated themselves, but because they understood that the ability to delay gratification, to choose discomfort in service of growth, is the foundation of every form of wealth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength comes from choosing the hard path when the easy one is right there. Look at your life honestly. How many times today did you choose comfort? How many times this week, this month? You chose the snooze button over getting up early. You chose the couch over the gym. You chose distraction over deep work. You chose spending over saving. You chose consumption over creation. And each time you made that choice, you reinforced the habit that keeps you poor. Because wealth isn't built in comfort. It's built in the gap between what you want to do and what you need to do. And every time you close that gap by doing the hard thing, you're building wealth. Every time you widen it by choosing comfort, you're building poverty. The shift is simple but not easy. Start choosing discomfort. Wake up when you don't want to. Do the work when you'd rather rest. Have the hard conversation. Learn the difficult skill. Save the money instead of spending it. Train your body instead of numbing your mind. And every time you make that choice, every time you override the impulse for comfort and choose growth instead, you're breaking the habit that keeps you poor. You're building the discipline that creates wealth. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." The friction is the discomfort. The trials are the daily choices to do what's hard instead of what's easy. And if you keep avoiding both, you'll stay exactly where you are, comfortable and broke. Habit 2. You spend money to look rich, instead of to become rich. You're buying things you don't need with money sheet. You don't have to impress people who don't care. The newest phone, the designer clothes, the expensive car, the bottle service at the club, the watch that costs 3 months of rent. And you justify it because you deserve it, or you work hard, or you only live once. But really, you're spending because you're insecure, because you think those things make you valuable, because you've confused looking rich with being rich. Here's the truth. Rich people don't spend money to look rich. They spend money to become richer. They buy assets, not liabilities. They invest in things that generate more money, not things that depreciate the moment they own them. They understand the difference between spending that builds and spending that drains, and they're ruthless about only doing the former. Every dollar you spend on status is a dollar you can't invest in your future. Every dollar you waste trying to impress people is a dollar that could be working for you, growing, compounding, building wealth while you sleep. But instead, you traded it for temporary validation, for the fleeting high of looking successful while remaining broke. And the people you're trying to impress? They're doing the same thing. They're just as broke as you are. They're just better at hiding it. Epictetus taught, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. The more you need external things to feel valuable, the poorer you are, because your sense of worth is tied to consumption. And consumption is a bottomless pit. There's always something newer, better, more expensive. And if you're chasing that, you'll never catch it. You'll just keep running, spending, staying broke, wondering why you can't get ahead. The shift is brutal but necessary. Stop buying things to impress people. Stop spending money on status symbols. Stop confusing consumption with success. And start asking yourself before every purchase, is this making me richer or just making me look richer? If it's the latter, walk away. Redirect that money into something that builds, into learning, into investing, into your business, into assets that appreciate instead of liabilities that drain. Because the people who actually have wealth don't need to advertise it. They're too busy building it. And the people who are advertising it, they're usually the ones who don't have it. So which one do you want to be? The person who looks rich but stays broke, or the person who quietly builds wealth while everyone else is busy performing? Habit 3. You trade your time for money. Instead of building systems, you wake up, you go to work, you trade 8, 10, 12 hours of your life for a paycheck, and then you go home exhausted, with barely enough energy to do it again tomorrow. And you tell yourself this is how it has to be, that this is what work looks like, that trading time for money is the only way. But it's not. It's just the easiest way, and easy keeps you poor. Rich people don't trade time for money. They build systems that make money while they sleep. They create value once and get paid repeatedly. They leverage their time by building things that work for them instead of working for things. And that's the fundamental difference. You're stuck in the time for money trap. They've escaped it. And until you do the same, you'll always be capped by the number of hours in a day. Think about what you're doing. You're selling the most valuable resource you have, your time, for a fixed amount that someone else decided is what you were worth. And every hour you spend doing that is an hour you can't spend building something that could make you truly wealthy. You're too tired after work to build your business, too drained to learn new skills, too exhausted to create. So you stay in the cycle, trading time for money, never getting ahead, never building anything that lasts. The Stoics valued time above all else. Seneca wrote an entire essay on the shortness of life, and in it he said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." And the biggest waste is trading all your time for just enough money to survive while never building anything that could set you free. That's not living, that's existing. And if you're okay with that, stop watching now. But if you're not, if you want more, then you need to break this habit. The shift is this: stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like a builder. Even if you work a job, use your off hours to build systems. Build a skill that can scale, build a product people want, build an audience, build something that can generate income without requiring your constant presence. Because the goal isn't to work harder, it's to work smarter, to create leverage, to build things that work for you instead of you working for them. And yes, it's hard at the beginning. Yes, you'll be tired. Yes, you'll have to sacrifice nights and weekends while everyone else is relaxing. But that's the price. That's the discomfort that leads to freedom. Because once your system is built, once your income is decoupled from your time, you're no longer poor, you're no longer trapped, you're no longer dependent on someone else deciding what you're worth. You've created your own wealth, and that's a completely different life. Habit 4. You surround yourself with people who normalize being broke. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Because the people you spend time with shape how you think, what you believe is possible, and what you accept as normal. And if everyone around you is broke, if everyone around you complains about money but does nothing to change it, if everyone around you spends instead of saves, consumes instead of creates, makes excuses instead of moves, then that's your standard. That's what you'll become. Because you'll normalize it. Your broke friends aren't bad people, but they're reinforcing broke habits. When you try to save, they tell you to live a little. When you try to build something, they tell you it won't work. When you try to invest, they tell you it's too risky, not because they're trying to sabotage you, but because your success would force them to confront their own inaction. So they pull you down. They keep you comfortable. They keep you broke, just like them. Marcus Aurelius understood this. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. But your thoughts are influenced by the people around you. If everyone you know thinks being broke is normal, that's what you'll think. If everyone you know believes rich people are lucky or corrupt, that's what you'll believe. And those beliefs will keep you exactly where you are, because you can't build wealth if you're surrounded by people who demonize it. The shift is hard because it often means distance. It means spending less time with people who drain you and more time with people who challenge you. It means seeking out people who are where you want to be, who've built what you want to build, who think differently than the crowd you've been running with. And yes, that's uncomfortable. Yes, some people will be offended, but your financial future is more important than their comfort. This doesn't mean you abandon everyone. It means you're strategic about who influences you. You can love people from a distance. You can care about them without adopting their mindset. You can wish them well without letting their limiting beliefs become yours. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your life, not them. And if the people around you are pulling you down, you have to make a choice. Stay comfortable and stay broke, or get uncomfortable and build wealth. Find mentors. Find communities of people who are building. Join groups where the conversation is about growth, not complaints. Surround yourself with people who make you feel behind because they're so far ahead. That discomfort, that stretch, that's where growth happens. That's where wealth is built, not in the comfort of people who think just like you, but in the challenge of people who think bigger. Habit 5. You have no plan, no vision, no long-term thinking. You live day to day, paycheck to paycheck. You handle today's problems with today's money and hope tomorrow works out somehow. You have no financial plan, no clear vision of where you want to be in 5 years, no long-term strategy, just reaction, just survival, just hoping things get better while doing nothing to make them better. And that lack of vision, that absence of planning, is why you're poor. Rich people think in decades. They plant trees they won't sit under. They make investments that won't pay off for years. They sacrifice now for massive benefit later. But you're thinking about this weekend, about this month, maybe this year if you're disciplined. And that short-term thinking keeps you trapped in scarcity because you're always dealing with immediate needs instead of building long-term wealth. The Stoics were obsessed with living with purpose, with intention, with a clear understanding of the end goal. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of his mortality, not to be morbid, but to live with urgency and direction. He asked himself, is this necessary? About everything. Is this action moving me toward my goal or away from it? And without a goal, without a vision, you can't answer that question. So you just drift. You just spend. You just exist. And drifting doesn't build wealth. The shift starts with getting clear. Where do you actually want to be financially? Not some vague, I want to be rich. Specifically, how much do you want to have saved? How much passive income do you want? What does financial freedom look like for you? And once you have that vision, you reverse engineer it. What do you need to do this year to get there? This month, this week, today? And then you do those things relentlessly until the vision becomes reality. Without a plan, every dollar you make gets spent because there's no destination for it, no purpose, no role in your larger vision. But when you have a plan, every dollar has a job. This much goes to investments, this much to savings, this much to building your business, this much to learning. And suddenly you're not just making money, you're directing it, you're using it strategically. You're building wealth with intention. Seneca said, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. You can work as hard as you want. You can hustle, grind, sacrifice. But if you don't know where you're going, you're just busy. You're not building. You're not progressing. You're just moving. And motion without direction is just chaos. It's exhausting. And it keeps you exactly where you are. So sit down, get uncomfortable, and do the work of creating a vision, of building a plan, of defining what wealth means to you and mapping the path to get there. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to exist. Because a plan you follow beats no plan every single time. And once you have that clarity, once you know where you're going, every decision becomes easier. Because you can ask, does this move me toward my goal or away from it? And if it's the latter, you don't do it. That's discipline. That's strategy. That's how wealth is built. Integration. These 5 habits are connected. They're all symptoms of the same root problem. Lack of discipline, lack of vision, lack of willingness to sacrifice comfort today for freedom tomorrow. And when you practice all 5, when you choose comfort, spend on status, trade time for money, surround yourself with broke thinking, and live with no plan, you're not just staying poor. You're actively building poverty. You're reinforcing the patterns that guarantee you'll struggle. But here's what changes everything. When you flip these habits, when you start choosing discomfort over comfort, when you spend to build instead of to impress, when you create systems instead of trading time, when you surround yourself with wealth builders instead of excuse makers, when you live with vision instead of reaction, you don't just improve your finances, you transform your entire life. Because wealth isn't just about money, it's about freedom, it's about options, it's about not being controlled by circumstances. It's about building a life where you make decisions based on what you want, not what you can afford. And that kind of life is built through discipline, through the daily practice of doing what's hard instead of what's easy, through habits that most people refuse to adopt because they require sacrifice. The Stoics understood that freedom comes from self-mastery, that wealth is a byproduct of discipline, that you can't control outcomes, but you can control habits. And when you control the right habits, the outcomes take care of themselves. Epictetus said it simply, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And if you're a slave to comfort, to status, to short-term thinking, to the opinions of broke people, you're not free, you're trapped, and money won't change that. Only you can. Call to reflect. So look at your life, honestly. Which of these 5 habits are you practicing? And don't lie to yourself. Don't make excuses. Don't say you'll change someday. Look at what you did. Today, yesterday, this week. Did you choose comfort or discomfort? Did you spend to look rich or to become rich? Did you trade time for money or build systems? Did you surround yourself with people who challenge you or people who keep you comfortable? Did you act on a plan or just react to whatever came up? Your answers to those questions tell you everything you need to know about your financial future, because your habits today are creating your reality tomorrow. And if you don't like where you are, the only way to change it is to change the habits that got you here. Pick one habit to break. Just one. Start there. Maybe it's choosing 1 hour of discomfort every day, 1 hour where you do the hard thing, build the skill, work on your business, learn something valuable. Maybe it's cutting one status purchase this month and redirecting that money to investments. Maybe it's dedicating one evening a week to building a system instead of watching TV. Maybe it's distancing yourself from one person who normalizes struggle. Maybe it's creating a simple financial plan and reviewing it every week. One habit, one change, sustained over time, and watch what happens. Because when you break one poverty habit and replace it with one wealth habit, you start to see results. Small at first, but real. And those results build momentum. They build belief. They build the confidence that you can actually change, that you're not stuck, that wealth is possible for you if you're willing to practice the habits that create it. The Stoics taught that philosophy is worthless unless you live it, that knowledge without action is just entertainment. So don't just watch this video and nod along. Don't just agree and then go back to the same patterns. Do something, change something, break one habit, build one system, make one decision that serves your future instead of your comfort, because you're not poor because of your circumstances. You're poor because of your habits, and habits can be changed. Starting right now, starting with you, starting with one decision to do what's hard instead of what's easy. The choice is yours. Stay comfortable and stay broke, or get uncomfortable and build wealth. Stay focused, stay grounded, and remember, the quiet work you do today is shaping the financial freedom you'll have tomorrow.